last panel of the day, so we're going to bring up the energy level with the most exciting project to be announced this week, according to my personal point of view. And I've been in the space for 9 years, in the enterprise blockchain space. So, but hopefully you walk away pretty excited too. So wanted to just start with intros. Stephen, if you want to start.
Thank you so much. I'm Stephen Hu from Standard Chartered. I run digital asset for trade and working capital business as part of the transaction banking. We actually part of the Project Guardian initiative together with MES. That's we have a piloted the SFF security token with underlying trade asset. And we also actually have been running a number of initiatives across the institutional DeFi, but also in the stable coin and the CBDC space. Very happy to talk about this very exciting stuff. It's the last session for today.
Hello everyone, Rajeev Tummala, HSBC Security Services. I lead our digital asset initiatives for security services globally. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Marita McGinley from Schroders. I'm the head of our digital asset strategy and looks across all of our digital asset initiatives globally.
Thank you. Hi everyone, this is Deepak here, Deepak Mehra. I'm based out of London. I lead strategic investments for Europe and Asia for our capital markets business and also our digital asset efforts globally.
Great. So we are going to start with a couple slides just to tee up the Guardian Wholesale Network, which is really a new market paradigm. If we go to the next slide, which gives really an exec overview of the project. If we can, oh, sorry. All right, thanks. So what is the Guardian Wholesale Network? So you're familiar with the overall, there's a number of Project Guardian initiatives over the years, and I know a number of the members on the panel have been involved with some of those. So they'll talk about what's new compared to prior years. The Wholesale Network really underpins a number of use cases. It's multi-member, multi-asset, multi-currency. And you're looking at, tokenized cash, FX, fixed income, and funds, asset wealth management. There's an initial 5 members who've been involved, and we have 4 of the 5 represented on stage. So Citi, HSBC, Schroders, Standard Chartered, and UOB. So what's really special about this? The members, the 5 banks have actually been conducting live transactions on a test net, doing something quite new in the industry, which is providing composability across all these different use cases at the smart contract level. So you're really getting customizable financial solutions, and what people have been looking for, there's different labels for it, not just composable finance, but institutional DeFi. So we're going to dive in a little bit more. It's a shared utility. There's been over 15 roles that have been involved with live testing on the testnet for end-to-end transactions. And Kaleido, I'm the founder and president of Kaleido. I've been proud to be a technology partner for this. So really looking at the Guardian Wholesale Network vision, it's really about composability and being open and interoperable, and not having like a fixed view of programmability, but really letting you choose your own adventure and really mimic the way transactions happen today in capital markets. For all of you in the audience, we invite you to learn more, consider joining the efforts if that's appropriate, and input into the applications and use cases. There are demos happening at the different banks, at MAS booth, the open source pavilion, so you could dive into these use cases and roles much more. There is programmability at the privacy level on EVM for the fixed income use case, which you can see demoed as well. So that's quite exciting as well, the institutional grade privacy. And I will point out, this is a real blockchain with digital assets represented on chain. There's a decentralized stack of software that each of these members run, but still having that unified end-to-end sort of choice of composable finance transactions that they can run. So I invite you to visit some of the booths for more demos and deep dives if you're interested during the week. So with that, just moving into the panel questions. So I wanted to start with if someone would be interested in just describing what exactly is composable finance.
Sure, I can take a stab at that.
Thanks, Deepak.
I think of composable finance in terms of Lego bricks. You get them in different shapes, different colors, different sizes, and you can put them together to either recreate existing shapes that you see in the world or use your creativity and come up with something completely new. And I think composable finance is the same paradigm used in finance, where, for example, what we did in the Guardian Wholesale network is brought FX swaps. We bought digital MMFs, and we married them together and created a new Lego block. So that's a simple way to understand composability in the context of finance.
Thanks, Deepak. Oh, Rajeev?
So I think the other aspect is we can build on each other's work. That is basically the programmability basically gives you that ability, and when you put in programmability into assets, so certain functions of that particular asset life cycle can be easily extended, right? So I can build on what other members of the network have put out on the network. I can sort of extend it and put it back, and someone else can take our work and then extend it. In a way, it truly makes a difference for the multi-member network.
Stephen?
I'm add on to that. I think composable finance is also about breaking the silos and connect the digital elements that we have today. So I think there's quite a number of conversations talking about really interoperability. Actually, if you think about that, actually all those fragmented liquidity pools can be actually connected, and actually there can be concentrated if we have a truly programmable securities, but also programmable money, and on the platform that is truly interoperable across the multiple organizations that we have today.
Yeah, so I love, Stephen, what you said about this being a horizontal platform. And I guess to date, there have been a lot of siloed initiatives where you really need to get into that silo or walled garden. You're not getting the liquidity, you're not getting the benefits or promise of blockchain and the programmability. So I don't know if anyone else has any other comments or thoughts on that before we move to a different topic.
I think linked to the silo, I see composable finance as actually a lesson learned. So, you know, financial markets and capital markets have been evolving for hundreds of years, but really the last 100 years we've started to establish processes, technology systems and regulations around them. And we've done that in a very ad hoc manner. So we've ended up with very segregated, discrete regulation systems, processes, teams, locations even. And we have asset class specific regulation, asset class specific law, technology. We've got a really complex, fragmented ecosystem. I see composable finance as an opportunity for us to basically future-proof us not doing that again, not ending up with like, here's all my regulation for a lending token, here's my regulation for an equity token, here's my legislation for an NFT token. It's really about a flexible modular framework that is compatible. It's almost asset class agnostic, and it's compatible across jurisdictions, across investors, across platforms, and across providers.
I love that. So Marita, I think you opened the door to the sort of the lessons learned topic and the insights there. Specifically, I know many of you were involved with Project Guardian over the years. What's different this year, and maybe what are some of the lessons learned from some of those prior activities?
I can start with, I think the lesson we've learned is that let's not aim for perfection. I think historically, you know, it was quite a big barrier to say that we were going to build a brand new product on a brand new infrastructure and it was going to be profitable day one and it was going to, and that was almost the expectation that people had to be able to properly fund this. Thankfully, like, you know, within Schroders, we see tokenization as a real direction of travel in the future, and we're taking both a qualitative and a quantitative approach to it. But I think not aiming for perfection and not trying to ensure that day one everything has to be perfect is probably the right approach. There is going to be friction in the first few years of this journey.
Actually, I totally on the same page, not aim for perfection. I think a little bit a reality check is that we must recognize that tokenization market is still quite nascent.
Yeah.
And about $30 billion according to the online data. And if you compare with even the overall crypto market, it's still about 0.6%. And in entire, you know, the financial universe that we have, it is still tiny. It is still very young. It needs to grow, right? So, but we do see the technology is playing this role. Technology works. We see the efficient gain. We see that actually the user experience is improving. But at the same time, the question will be really how do we scale up, right? So I think financial institutions are setting into this uncharted territory. But at the same time, we also need to actually figure out a way to scale up. And to me, that's really about how do we improve the cost-revenue ratio. And as with everything new, the first 1 or 2 transactions, you always cost more. And that cost is not about just building a technology. It's all about your compliance costs, about your legal costs, about the time you spend, actually your communication, your marketing, everything being included. So that's why, to me, this Guardian Wholesale Network is actually indeed a market paradigm, because actually it provides an opportunity actually to have a kind of the shared function, shared utility that can enable the market to function much more efficiently at the beginning of their development. And if done right, we probably can change the face of the financial market very quickly. And as I think in the MES opening speech, Mr. Leon talked about, is we are seeing this inflection point, right? And this inflection point, you don't have that very often, right? So if you look back at the history of the finance, probably we started to see the Visa moment in the 1970s, but we have to done it right, and we have to done together.
So I'll make like 3 points, right? So I agree with Marita and Stephen. So in the context of innovation, seeking perfection or precision in the early days is a defect, right? So that is you got to give yourself headroom. Second aspect is when it comes to interoperability, there's 2 types of interoperability, especially if you want to scale infrastructure. One is, of course, right, so stuff that we are doing together here. That is multi-member interoperability across this new format. Right? It's not a new asset class, right? So financial assets, as we all know, they've existed. We're just implementing a smarter version of the financial assets we know. That's what we're doing. Programmability introduces dynamism bought by software. And then it is very important for the networks that we are creating to interact and interoperate with traditional systems. Because onto this new infrastructure, you bring on financial assets. You have such a large inventory of outstanding assets, right? So assets already issued. Even if you were to issue new assets, every asset that you issue is in a digital asset format. It'll be still like in 5 years' time, you'll probably have 3% of the assets that are in the new format. So it's something to begin to think about, because the multi-member network sort of solves for interoperability of new assets being issued. What happens to the existing assets? It's something that we need to begin to think about. What are the frameworks and how? And then the third point I want to make is the market infrastructure will need. It's almost like building out physical infrastructure, right? It needs patient and long-term deep-pocketed capital. That's nature. So to assume something will change quickly, we can push for changes going through, but we'll have to carry a lot of the market participants. So this will need patient, deep pockets of capital for us to sort of accomplish the change that we need.
I might just double click on the last point about requiring deep patient capital. And I think that's where I personally see a lot of value from the Guardian Wholesale Network paradigm, where we are not going to all incur duplicative costs. You get a lot of the functionality out of the box. You literally show up with your spec, the steps, and literally in a matter of few weeks, you're off and running. And you're not only achieving much faster time to market and saving on costs, you're also not fragmenting the ecosystem from a liquidity perspective and an operational perspective. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And what excited me the most about the GWN.
Yeah, I love that. So you're avoiding the siloed sort of issues with fragmentation around liquidity, not looking for perfection, but also, I think in the last panel, there was a real fatigue around POCs. You heard from John from DTCC and Darko from LSEG and Jorgen from Euroclear. And this is much more than that. So it's a live platform where there's actually enterprise grade infrastructure to shared utility. So it makes a lot of sense from a cost perspective, and it's really, you get the value of composability. So I was curious if you do compare this, a Guardian Wholesale Network, to existing solutions in the market, whether those are classified as POCs or pilots or production, for each of those use cases that where you can now put together in a composable fashion, what are your reflections or thoughts on what was achieved with the Guardian Wholesale Network versus maybe some other repo solutions or some of these other, with just one fixed sort of asset class type approach?
I think one of we already touched upon the ability to leverage what's already built out there, out-of-the-box functionality. The other thing which I feel is possible in this new paradigm is the ability, leveraging composability again, to just talk about the use case that we had with Fidelity International on FX swaps and MMFs. From a corporate treasurer's perspective, that's unlocking a completely different product that enhances their yields, that gives them portfolio diversification, gives them better ability to risk manage. And arguably, that's not possible outside of the GWN paradigm.
So just congratulations. I saw the news earlier this week. So I think you're referring to the news with Citi did bilateral transactions with Fidelity International, but leveraging the connecting to the GWN network. So this shows, even connecting to other bilateral trading partners. You had mentioned, Deepak, connecting to existing systems. How do you see, maybe from HSBC perspective with Orion, the possibilities to do something similar to what Citi was doing, announced with Fidelity?
So this is primarily where we need to come together and sort of push out a specification, right? So that says there will be specific issuance platforms that are already out there that are doing this in the digital asset format. So now how does a multi-member network open itself up? This is an open network. So the sooner we publish a specification, right? So now I'm not saying the multi-members have to come out and publish a specification, but I guess there are initiatives like GL1, all right? So they are looking at establishing standards, specifications, architecture, and this multi-member network can be one of the first ones to comply with that, and then integration with other platforms. So you're basically looking at formation of networks, right? So, and as more networks sort of comply with this, then the asset movement and the compliance and associated things sort of become seamless.
Thank you. Stephen?
I think the reality is also like there's not going to be one network that rule them all, right? So one network, super network, like a super app. It has to connect with the existing network, and we all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and that is make this network powerful. And to me, it is also very important to recognize that there's also the benefits of having a shared network, which is actually not only from technology reusability perspective, but it's also about the standardized rulebook and also standardized even commercial framework, as well as the importance of the governance framework that we all agree among ourselves. So these actually can just ease the transaction among ourselves, because every financial transaction is actually very complex, involving multiple parties. So that would be very, very exciting. I think another principle that we see, also another a big question is actually how to incentivize the usage. Because in the past, we have seen quite a number of the bank consortiums in the past. We also actually have seen some of them become super successful, some of them have not. And one of the issues is how to bring the volume to the network, leverage each other's strength, but also have a right incentive and to the participant, to the member, but at the same time, also to make sure there's an equitable access, no matter big and small. And the question will be, does it only involve the banks, 5 of us? I don't think it will be just about 5 financial institutions. In future, you need to scale to more than the initial founding members have, especially when we have a global layer 1 initiative that MES have already started announcing, right? So that will be a multiplication effect on a global basis.
And I think this is maybe where Schroders have a unique, but we don't have any proprietary perspective on this. So we are not a platform provider. We're not going to host our own network. We're not going to build our own network. We're not going to launch infrastructure in this space. So for us, what we're really driving for is a commoditization of the services. So today, we have to custody and safeguard client assets. We can go to any tier 1 custodian and we can get the same standard of service from all of them. Very different, different add-ons and whatnots, but fundamentally a core same service. You can't get that today across different networks. So that's what we're advocating for, not necessarily, one network over the other, but a standard of service that will lead us to be able to have confidence in how we compare them, and then we can select the best platform for our client needs or for our needs at that point in time.
And then Marita, from the client needs perspective, what new types of products or services do you think something like the Guardian Wholesale Network could unlock?
I think it's two elements on that. I think there's a lot of good work happening at the moment around tokenized funds, but it is really tokenizing an existing conventional vehicle, and I often call that the faster horse analogy. You know, we're building a faster, hopefully a cheaper product, but we're not transforming what we can do. I think the real transformative piece comes when you open up personalization. So today, the vast majority of people's assets are managed in a collective nature, so you're invested in some form of a collective investment scheme. And while you can pick some broad macro trends or thematics to invest in, you have limited control over the underlying strategy. I think tokenization and blockchain allows us to extend out the level of personalization that people can achieve. So I think that in itself would be huge and will allow us to pivot from being somewhat product and collectively managed to being more personally and individually managed. And I think the second layer to that isn't necessarily a new wave of product options, but a new wave of potential clients. There are still numerous barriers to access to financial products and financial security for many investors throughout the world. If tokenization can reduce the transaction cost and reduce the cost of getting into those products, it's serving a new market with new products and traditional products.
I love that. I don't know, Deepak, if you want to add any thoughts on just looking at from Citi's perspective, new products or services, you know, now that you know, you've been looking at the live transactions, working with bilateral counterparties, you know, what's next in 2025 that the Guardian Wholesale Network can unlock in terms of new things that you could provide?
Potentially, I think the introduction of the cash leg, maybe in the format of tokenized deposits or more effectively something like from a Singaporean CBDC. I think that can potentially unlock use cases that would otherwise be constrained by counterparty credit limits, for example. So I think that could be one interesting development, which if Wholesale can unleash a wave of creativity amongst the participants next year.
Yeah, so the other thing is, like Marita was mentioning, one is personalization, right? So you sort of go for specific mass customization, or you can sort of say product for one, right? That is possible. The second thing is, I think we can begin to offer investors more diversification for the same amount of money, because now you can sort of bring in the tickets lower. So for the same amount of money, investors do get more personalized and more diversified advice, and that's primarily the holy grail of infrastructure is, right? So we are traveling in that direction. The other part is to also for us to come together and look at what are the operational elements that allow for Guardian Wholesale Network to scale, right? So how does the operations work, right? So there's going to be exceptions, and how do we manage it, and who is the operator of GW, and what is the construct? How do we go about figuring that out? So, and that's primarily when I think we can start to expand the more members, and whether we bring in a new digital FMI to basically do this, it's up to the members to sort of come together and begin to think about it, right? So for it to scale, we will need to sort of bring in that kind of a structure.
Stephen, any thoughts 2025, what's next for the Guardian Wholesale Network?
I think to me, 2025 is about the community. So we talk about a lot of community here. I think now we still have a relatively small but quite representative community here. I think in 2025, we would like to further explore to expansion of the community, like Rajeev mentioned, not only for the initial members, but who else should be part of that. And that should really fit into the governance framework that all the members that you agree with. That will become very powerful booster to the adoption of the network. I think it's also about the involvement with the policymakers, seeking constant feedback, observations, as well as to getting this feedback to improve the network functionality, as well as refine the vision, refine how do we operationalize this network at a scale.
Great. Well, I guess any parting words for the audience? I know we're really starting to cross the chasm. There were a lot of people who are maybe new to digital assets and asset tokenization, trying to figure this out. I know we have a lot of seasoned veterans here. I don't know if you have any advice for people as they're looking to maybe join, industry collaborative efforts like the Guardian Wholesale Network, or trying to do something for their own firm. What advice would you have for them? I don't know if you'd like to start, Deepak.
Well, advice, my suggestion would be to just be very, very patient. You're talking about changing direction of mega tanker, and it's going to take patience. It's going to take a lot of deliberate effort. It's not going to happen overnight. You're talking about the financial plumbing that moves trillions and quadrillions every year. So I guess my advice would just be patient with this.
Great. Marita?
I'd say welcome. It's never too late. It's still very early. And I would say learn from our mistakes. Speak to people. This is one of the most collaborative environments I've ever worked in. Like the first 15 years of my career, everybody was not sharing their homework with anybody else. Whereas now you walk in and people are like, here are the problems I have. How can we solve them together? We can't afford to all make the same mistakes. So I would say learn from our mistakes. Try and solve one that we haven't solved, or pick a new one that we haven't tackled yet.
So if you've primarily been in this space, like Marita says, right, we are basically not for 15 years, maybe for 50 years, we have not shared homeworks, right? So and to sort of propose this, it does look like a radical idea, right? It does look like, but again, right, so radical ideas do scare people, right? So we are in this tent, right? So this is about radical idea, but it's calibrated steps, right? So we are basically moving in a calibrated fashion, right? Action is calibrated. That is what I want to say, right? It does seem like a radical step, but the action, the way we are going is sort of calibrated, in sync with, like Stephen's point, right? In sync with regulators, taking constant feedback, showcasing that. So as an industry, I think this sort of showcases our improving maturity as well, right? So like if you take a look at other sectors, right? So let me take an example of telecom. They have GSM, there's CDMA, other standards. Anyone can basically, there's a bit of open standards out there, and I think we as collectives are recognizing the importance of that.
I would say GWN is an open and interoperable network. So I think the key word is not only interoperable, it's also open. So, and we welcome the feedbacks along the way. If you feel interested and want to be part of the journey of tokenization, well, we recognize we need to be patient. Speak with us, speak with any of the current participation in the GWN network, and we can take it there.
Huge thank you to the panelists, and there will be a Guardian Wholesale Network blueprint that will be published. So learn, there's an open invitation to learn from the efforts here and then collaborate going forward. So thank you so much. And everyone in the audience, enjoy drinks at the Key, which I think you're going to be invited to in a minute. But thank you.